Hello, everyone. My name is 12 Gage, and this is my channel, 12 Gage Investigative. If you're looking for the podcast to keep your attention, to keep the exciting topics coming, you've come to the right place. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Let's dive in. Good evening, good evening. Happy Wednesday evening. My name is 12 Gage. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gage Investigative. And tonight we're doing an investigative journalism podcast based on a lot of things that are going on in the world today. One of the things that seems to be eating at people, if you don't know, now you're about to know. Have y'all heard about the Michael Jordan situation? Let's talk about that a little bit. You know who Michael Jordan is, arguably the best, the most awesome basketball player to ever put on a pair of cleats. I mean, not cleats, a pair of basketball shoes. But Mike has gotten himself in a bit of controversy. Over the weekend, he won a NASCAR race, or he didn't win it, but his driver won it. And after, you know how when people win something huge, it's always been an event to throw a bucket of Gatorade on whoever the winning person was. So not only did they throw the Gatorade on Mike, but there was a small child close to Mike, and he got totally drenched with this Gatorade as well, such as the ice and everything else. And as if you look at the clip, you can honestly see that Mike is wiping the ice off the individual. He's trying to get the ice off him and do the right thing. But you know, people have ran with this and made it totally unapproachable in their minds. It seems like we have a fascination with pedophilia these days. And I don't know why that is. I have no clue. The Epstein thing seems to be a daily conversation, but we never really conversate on the people that are actually in those files. The people that have been protected all these years. You know, there for a little bit I was doing hold on a second, I'm kind of fixing my camera. There for a little bit I did a couple lives, and we were talking about the Epstein files and the people that were in the files and the pictures that were being released and everything above and beyond. But think about this, you know, why are those people protected? Why are those people protected from prosecution? You know, Epstein supposedly went to prison, committed suicide, end the story, right? But was it really that easy? Was it really that easy for a man to go to prison, commit suicide, and that be the end of the story? Because just like everything else, there's been countless stories about a doppelganger. He really didn't do it. We've seen him at airports. We've seen him here. We've seen him there. He's not really dead. What do you believe? What do you believe? Do you believe that the man is actually deceased? Or do you believe that we're living in some kind of psychological type of simulation? I'd like to know because, you know, the world is strange as hell these days. It really is. Nothing seems normal, and the more abnormal that it seems, the more celebrated it is. And have you ever thought who pushes these narratives? Who pushes the narratives that get talked about on a daily? Where do they come from? You click on any social media platform, whether it be YouTube, whether it be TikTok, whether it be Facebook, Reddit, you name it. There's somebody talking about some kind of conspiracy. Let's take the Nancy Guthrie case. That's been on the burner for 17 days. 17 days. And still no clearer formation than the day she went missing. All we have is more questions. Law enforcement flipping and flopping and doing all this, that, and back and forth. What do you believe about that? Do you believe that they're messing up the investigation? Do you believe that they're fighting with the federal government and who's going to find Nancy first? Or do you believe that they honestly don't have a clue where Nancy is? Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. Do you believe that the Nancy really is not with us anymore, or do you believe that there's a possibility that Nancy is still alive? I'd like to know. I'd like to know exactly what you feel, what you think. Because after all, isn't that what asking these questions is all about? Because you gotta find an answer. Otherwise it's just an indefinite conundrum of an enigma wrapped in infinity. You know, I love asking questions. That's part of my that's part of my bringing the best I got to what I do on a daily. I ask a lot of questions. And, you know, most of the time, those questions lead to answers because it leads to people thinking outside the box. So let me tell you a little bit, excuse me, let me tell you a little bit on what I know about the Nancy Guthrie case. The latest is that they got the glove tested that was 2 miles away. The glove that they found 2 miles away, not the glove that was found at the crime scene. Think about that a minute. Think about that a minute. The glove at the crime scene, we haven't heard nothing about that glove. But the glove 2 miles away comes back inconclusive, ran it through CODIS, so we're waiting for any kind of hit on that. And as you remember in the Idaho 4 case, when it comes to CODIS, if you have never committed a crime, excuse me, if you've never committed a crime and been swabbed and entered into the database, then people can put your DNA in there all they want, and there's not going to be a hit. So the same could hold true to this situation that we're talking about today. Is there gonna be a hit? Is this case finally gonna come to fruition? Is it finally gonna end up with us knowing what happened to Nancy Guthrie? Hopefully she's found alive. 17 days. Hopefully whoever has her, did the right thing and kept her alive because, as many other people have speculated, and I've kind of thought about this case, but just like I think Idaho burned me out when it comes to hearing stuff over and over and over repetitively on a daily basis. Because you know what? After a while, I lose interest in it. It's almost like this is just too much. There's nothing that is adding up. The pieces are just all over the table, just like in Idaho. Nothing is adding up, and I'm not going to spend all my days trying to piece together something that in the end could be totally different than what the outcome appears to be. Because that's what we found out in that case in Idaho 4. So I hope this Nancy Guthrie case is totally different. I'm talking about the things that are happening in this world today that many people don't have a clue about. I made a short earlier about an individual. Her name is Annie. Let me find out her name so I don't butcher it. Um, I believe it's Annie Guthrie. Let me let me find out. Or my bad. I just said Annie Guthrie. What the hell was I talking about? That's the daughter. Annie Tisdale. Her name is Annie Tisdale. She's 78 years old with dementia, and she's from, they call it Abbeville, South Carolina. But as you looked at the short, it spoke on her doing the daily events that she normally did. She went to pick up some food. Her food wasn't ready. So she took off driving a little bit. And then she came back, got the food, and then she is starting to be tracked. One, this tracking, they noticed that Annie is driving around. No real destination. She seems and appears to be lost. Mind you, she's 78 years old with dementia. So she's driving a black Toyota Tundra. And all the information's in the short. If you go into my shorts on my channel, or if you listen to Nancy Grace, you will see a lot of the information on her um, true crime podcast that she did today. She did a lot of information as well. That's where I got some of my information, if not all of it. You know, um, it's sad that these elderly, excuse me, these elderly individuals go missing, and that there's not enough emphasis on they're being found. You know what I mean? It's like so and so went missing, this person went missing, but you never hear any kind of recourse after the fact. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, what happened? What happened to these people? Were they found? Were they not found? Well, Miss Tisdale seems to be the last known 10 hours ago. The last location that she was seen would have been in the state of Georgia. And, if you have dementia, I don't know what she was doing driving for one. Maybe her dementia wasn't that advanced. Maybe it was just sporadic or brought on by certain chemical whatever. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a medical person, so not even trying to speculate that I know exactly what dementia is, but I know that it affects your memory and it affects your ability to remember certain things, either long term or short term in your mind. So obviously she has the inability to remember where she lives or where she was headed. So if you're out there in Georgia or anywhere in the South Carolina, Abbeville area, be on the lookout for Annie Tisdale. And let me give you the license plate number because I have it right here. It is 331860W. That is W as in walrus. Once again, 331860W as in walrus. Let's do the right thing and let's help this family get some relief by getting Miss Annie home. She doesn't deserve to be out there. She's been out there way too long at this point. So, once again, she's driving a black Toyota Tacoma, and it looks like it has a bed liner on it that's tight knit. And it has a silver bumper with black um, plastic interlaid there with a trailer hitch. The license plate number, once again, is 331860W as in walrus. Let's get Miss Annie home. She doesn't need to be out there, not one more night. You know, it's sad that people go missing, not by their own accord. You know, sometimes you just get confused and maybe she ran out of gas. Let's let's hope that somebody sees something and help Miss Annie get home. So, if you're watching this, if you watch this on replay and you live in the Georgia area, I believe they said it was the Layton, Georgia area is where she was seen, if that's the town. Um, be on the lookout for Miss Annie Tisdale. Let me give you the license plate once more, just in case you weren't listening. Um, she is 78 years old. She's from Abbeville, South Carolina. She's African American. She has dark complexion. She's 5 foot tall. Let me make sure this is 5 foot. Five, well, maybe 5'6". 5'6", 181 pounds. She has shoulder length black hair and brown eyes. And let me give you the license plate number. It is 331860W. And she was last seen driving her black Toyota Tacoma. And I believe the Tacoma is a 2000 and let me tell you, I will tell you that information right now because it's right here. Um, Good Lord. I believe it's a 2015 Tacoma. So be on the lookout if you're in any of those areas. No, this is another lady. I messed up and called her Annie Guthrie. This is another lady. Her name is Annie Tisdale. She's a 78-year-old grandmother missing from Abbeville, South Carolina. So please, if you have any information, please call 911 or Crime Stoppers in any of those states and do the right thing. Let's help Miss Annie get home. You know, also, it's that time of year, it's that time of year where it's starting to warm up in some places. It's still kind of snowy and cold in some other places. Here in Texas, the weather is not bad. It's probably in the 50s, 60s, somewhere around there. The sun is shining most days after that horrendous ice storm we had a couple weeks ago. Um, but I want you to consider when the transition of the seasons to be possibly getting a physical, getting your health checked out. It's never too early and it's never too late. You know, try to stop anything and everything that you normally wouldn't even take credence to. Get yourself checked out. And that's just a public service announcement there because I've never said that before. But I was thinking about it today, and some of my viewers, I don't know if they go to the doctor. I don't know if you have health insurance. I don't know if you have any kind of health problems that you might need taken care of. If so, make sure that you make that a priority as we're going into the warmer months, because sometimes when you've been isolated during the winter, you don't even think about your health problems. You don't even worry about anything like that. But as the weather warms up, we're going to be out and about. And there's a lot of illnesses out there right now. So be on the mindful lookout to take care of yourself. And once again, that's just a public service announcement. Just kind of like a little breather. Like back in the day before there was TV or anything like that, they used to, the radio, not that I was alive during them, but I've seen movies where, the show would be talking just like I'm doing right now. And they bust into a commercial. And during the commercial, they do just like what I just did. And they're busting out the public service announcement just to make sure that people take their Robitussin or whatever it is that they're trying to sell. And I guess that's what I just did. So oh well, take it for what it's worth. I thought it was pretty funny, but also I was trying to make a point at the same time. You know, since we're talking about a lot of different things on this late night podcast, because that's what I'm trying to turn my channel into, more of a podcast format than one of those where I just get on here and I show other people's stuff and just give some kind of commentary on it. To me, that's boring. And I was looking back at some of the videos because I was thinking to myself, that boring. I mean, how did I do that for 3 years? No wonder I was burnt out on it. To use other people's stuff and sit there and just commentate on it is not really creating anything. Another thing that I ran across today, it's about to be the 15th anniversary of Karina Saunders. And if you don't know Karina Saunders, once again, I did a short today. Excuse me. I'm recovering from an upper respiratory thing, so I apologize for coughing, you know. But if you don't know who Karina Saunders was, she was a 19-year-old female from Bethany, Oklahoma. Bethany, Oklahoma is located not too far from Oklahoma City. She tragically lost her life in February of 2011. But since then, Karina's killer has never been brought to justice. So what do you think about that? I mean, here we have somebody that killed a 19-year-old female, decapitated her, cut off certain parts of her body. They tried to cut off a tattoo on her. They, you know. I did a live today. I mean, not a live, but a premiere. So if you want to watch more about it, be sure you go to the channel and check it out. Um, it is a very tragic story. It really is. It's one of those stories that, you know, you just wonder, how did somebody get to that point in their lives? I tried reaching out to the father. I reached out to a reporter in that area. I reached out to an individual who stated they knew um, their sister knew Karina, trying to get somebody to be able to come up on a podcast and discuss her story, firsthand basis. What I remember about broadcasting the live about Karina is Karina had a situation in life where she didn't run away from home because she was legally an adult. She decided to live a life that a lot of us would not really approve of our children living. But, what can you do once they're legal adults? Well, Karina was running with a rough crowd. She was running with, individuals that lived in a trap house. And on the video, I show you the location of the house, the map view, and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting live if you want to take the time or you have nothing else to watch. Be sure that you go and check that out. It's not going to disappoint, I promise you. The one thing about Karina, though, is probably a couple days before she was murdered, she visited home, Bethany, and that area, because Oklahoma City is a big city, and there's a lot of suburbs. So Bethany, Oklahoma, would be not too far from the center of Oklahoma, I believe. And she visited home, and somehow or another went to a casino with another female. Well, once Karina exited the vehicle, the female went into the casino while Karina made a hard left and went and jumped in a red pickup truck and was never seen again. Her body was discovered behind a grocery store in two duffel bags. Each duffel bag contained parts of Karina. And to this day, they have yet to, they've interviewed a lot of people. They've, brought people in that almost could have been suspects, but they never have had enough for it to stick for them to be charged with the crime. Um, I did see an interview with a lady who recently came out in 2020 that said that she was actually at the location watching Karina lose her life, and she gave an interview. I'll have to go check that out. But like I said, I'm trying to get in touch with some of the family members or whoever, just to get a firsthand perspective, because instead of just diving into somebody's life like that, I always like to get permission from the family first, because it is out of respect. You're telling somebody else's story. And even though it is investigative journalism on that part, you're still, out of respect, trying to do it in the best, most respectful way. Especially to get the situation, the stuff correct. Well, Karina was in that lifestyle. And if you know that lifestyle, as I've talked about multitudes of times on my lives, that lifestyle has a lot of dangerous people in it. It has a lot of cons. It has a lot of people that are manipulators. It has people that don't value human life, especially if you're you're struggling with your own addiction. You know what I mean? And she was 19 years old. So if you think of a 19-year-old female who's living that type of life, it's not normal life like a 19-year-old. So you have to wonder, what was Karina, what was she running from and running towards? Because drugs will take you so far. But you know what? At some point, it was stated she was starting to clean up. She gave her life to the Lord. She was, all this happened before she was tragically murdered. So if you are interested in that cold case, like I said, it's in my library on my channel. Give it a shot. You won't be disappointed. And hopefully I do get in touch with the parents, somebody that is a spokesperson for the family that is willing to give me the okay to speak on their behalf, telling the story as it should be told, rather than having myself telling the story, which I have no right to do. You know what I mean? Because after the fact, it is her daughter. She's not my daughter. So I want to tell the story out of respect, not out of just wanting to have something to talk about. You know what I mean? So that is another tale of the tape as far as cold cases are concerned that I've been looking at lately. Another one that is really puzzling to me is the Ellen Greenberg case, and that keeps being brought up in the media circles time and time again. And I often wonder, are they ever going to get are they ever going to get it right? Was it indeed a homicide? Was it a suicide? What do you believe? That's another one that I've done that can be found in my library. Most of these are under lives. So if you're looking for them, just type in the name of the person and you can find that in the library. But if you remember the Ellen Greenberg case, she was a school teacher that was murdered in her apartment within minutes of her boyfriend leaving to go downstairs to the gym, comes back up, the door's locked. He tried to get in, left his keys on the inside, right? He finally gets in. He finds his girlfriend murdered. She's been stabbed multitudes of times, stabbed in the back of the head, had multitudes of cuts all around. And that's a very, very tragic case as well. None of these cases are as glorified as many people make them to be. You know what I mean? When you're talking about somebody losing their lives, it is never a beautiful thing. It is never something that should be celebrated. The killers should never be celebrated in my thought process. I believe that anyone that hurts another person for no reason at all should be dealt with however they should be dealt with. However, the court deems it necessary to find them guilty, even if they got to plead out. I'm not a fan of the plea bargain. Excuse me, but I can tell you, you know what? It takes them off the street. Once again, I'm not a fan, but it takes them off the street. You know what I mean? It takes them off the street. So they're never going to be able to harm another. And I guess if you're looking at it from that perspective, then it's a win win. I know that many people would like an eye for an eye. Many people would say, well, they killed this person, so they should be killed. They you know, I understand that concept. I really do. But unfortunately, in our country, the best that we have in our justice system is it offers more plea deals than it gets convictions, unless it's on the federal level. On the federal level, they get 99.8% conviction rate. So you decide to go against the Fed, chances are you're going to lose that battle. But Ellen Greenberg is another one that just troubles me because I can't really understand how law enforcement can go from homicide, suicide, homicide, suicide. Excuse me. Another case, those of you that were alive in 1994, there was a there was a time that was shifting from the big metal hair bands to Seattle. This is what we call the grunge era. And there was a band called Nirvana. Nirvana hit the scene like an atom bomb. The lead singer, Kurt Cobain, came from Aberdeen, Washington, left-handed guitar player. He always, I read multitudes of books on Kurt. I've also seen a lot of documentaries. One thing that I remember reading is that Kurt used to like to go down kind of like this underpass and just kind of sit there and kind of not really meditate, but kind of visualize his life because his life wasn't really that great. I believe that Kurt ended up going and living with his grandma. He picked up the guitar, and the rest is rock and roll history. Kurt Cobain, when they first came out and said that Kurt killed himself, my thought was, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way that Kurt Cobain, somebody at the height of their success, no matter what drugs or whatever he was dealing with, because he had just OD'd overseas. I can't remember where it was, but he had OD'd, and they had to cancel a lot of tour dates due to that fact. They said that he was feeling under the weather, he had the flu or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, Kurt OD'd. And it wasn't long after that, then he was found in his basement apartment with a shotgun, his driver's license, pulled out, um, syringe and paraphernalia around him. So I ask you this, since we're just to talk, right? Because that's what a podcast is. It's really just talking about different things. I ask you this. If you were going to kill yourself, would you go would you go to the length of, I mean, he wrote a note too. There was a note that was found. Supposedly Kurt wrote a note. Um, a handwriting expert couldn't couldn't make or be definitive of whether it was his writing or not, but would you go to the point of putting your driver's license out and laying everything out perfectly where you would land and the shotgun would be on your side? When ballistic experts have known that if you commit suicide, a shot to the mouth or a shot to the chest, whichever one it was, there's no way that he would be capable of having the grip to follow through with that shot. Like he might be able to shoot himself, but the gun would be thrust in another direction. I said all that long-winded speech just to say this. Okay? It has been found in 2026 that there is new evidence that Kurt Cobain did not commit suicide, that in fact it could have been a homicide. Hola. Doing very well. How are you, Chet? Thank you for being here. And thank you, Walt, for being here as well. And multitudes of people that have committed suicide, they've done it by different means. And a shotgun blast, I mean, when you're reading the books and they're describing it and you're watching the documentary, I believe the best documentary out there on Kurt Cobain is called Bleach. That documentary is called Bleach. So if you go and watch that, um, it is very, very interesting the way that it's outlined. I believe I don't know anymore. Well, I really thought that myself, but then I thought there's just too much. I mean, to not see the crime scene photos that would, if I saw the crime scene photo, because the photos that I've seen, obviously they blur the face and everything, and all you see is his torso and his legs, and he's laying flat. You know what I mean? And the gun is to his side, so you know it's interesting that they're going back and they're looking back in the case because there's a lot of people that believe that he was murdered. So um, I believe him and his wife Courtney Love were having marital problems at the point, and that's the thing. She had sent somebody over there to get that shotgun that was in his room, and once they arrived, they couldn't find it. So that's one of the things that really, in the whole scheme of things, it looks suspicious. Like, where did the shotgun go? Did he take it? Did he know that she was trying to get the shotgun? Was he fearful for his life? Was he trying to protect himself from somebody? And this was my thought on the whole thing. I thought somebody was up there with him as they were shooting heroin. Okay. And I thought, well, the guy that was fixing the rig, just gave him a hot shot, you know, gave him too much and he killed him. And to make it look like a suicide, he got the shotgun and, pulled the trigger and shot him. I've always thought that based on everything that I've read and seen. But I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm no expert. But based on what I've seen and what I've read, it seems more plausible and probable than not. You know what I mean? But Kurt Cobain, that story is back in the news. We lost a legend this week. Actually, we've lost two. We've lost Reggie Jackson. I mean, what the hell am I thinking? Um, Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr. and Robert Duvall. No matter your feelings on Reverend Jesse Jackson, whatever it is, rest in peace to you both, because you were important to somebody. So, Robert Duvall. I don't know if you've ever seen Apocalypse Now, but it was a movie that my father used to watch a lot. And one of the greatest lines in that movie was, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." And that was one of those classic lines, you know what I mean? Robert Duvall in Gone in 60 Seconds. I loved his role in that. He was the mechanic guy that was kind of Nicolas Cage's mentor. You know what I mean? He's been in so many movies. I believe they said he was in The Godfather. I never seen The Godfather. I guess I need to watch it before I pass one day. But I've never seen The Godfather. Oh, you met Jesse at O'Hare? That's awesome. Was he a good dude? You know, you can tell a lot when you meet somebody at, in a public setting. But we lost two great individuals. No matter how you look at them, may they rest in peace. In other news, it is Mardi Gras season. Mardi Gras down in New Orleans. Fat Tuesday was just the other day. And guess the kind of news that we get out of New Orleans. Shia LaBeouf. Y'all know who Shia LaBeouf is, right? Y'all seen the Transformer movies? The dude in the movie who has the car, Bumblebee? That's Shia LaBeouf. Well, apparently Shay was partying a little too hard down on Bourbon Street or wherever he was, down in New Orleans, and Shay got himself into a tidbit of a an argument that turned out into a lot of pushing and shoving and Shay going down onto the pavement, as you can see in the video that is being circulated around the internet. So Shay gets arrested, and before long, you view Shay is back at it on Bourbon Street or wherever he is down in Jackson Square area, partying like a rock star as well as he should. If you've ever been in New Orleans, you understand a fight kicks off every 30 seconds because there's a lot of fluids being ingested, there's a lot of testosterone in the area, and everything escalates quite quickly. It doesn't matter if you're small like Shay or if you're a big guy like me. It does not matter. It escalates quickly, and sometimes it ends quickly, without people being arrested. Because the last thing you want to do is be thrown in jail in that stinky little mobile jail that they have on Bourbon Street where everybody pisses around it and everything else. Let me know in the chat if you've ever been to New Orleans during Mardi Gras. Let me know in the comments if you're watching on replay what you think about New Orleans. I like the place honestly, and New Year's Eve is usually when I pick to frequent the Big Easy because there's nothing but easy times down there, and there's a lot of good times. I mean, you don't have to necessarily drink in order to have a good time. There's a lot of things to look at. There's a lot of wonderful food. If you've never been to Cafe du Monde and have some beignets and some chicory coffee, I don't know where you've been because you're not living until you've had that. You know what I mean? So once again, the place to be is New Orleans, Jackson Square, Cafe du Monde, munching down on some beignets and some chicory coffee to wash you down. You know, I've never been to Mardi Gras either, but I've always told myself one year I'm gonna go. And here we are still waiting. I guess because it catches up too quick. You know what I mean? I usually have a big winter trip, and by the time February gets here, I'm kind of saving up for the summer. It's kind of that kind of stuff. I never do anything for spring break. I don't know about you guys, but it is a good time down there. Cafe Du Monde. it is a good place. And they're fast. They're fast. Paxki. So, another thing that I've noticed about the world in which we live, because I have a lot of time, not only to think, but to reflect on how things are as we visualize them through the lens of a camera, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on TikTok, whether it be on any of those social media websites. Not everything you see is exactly as what it is. I don't know what your feeling is. Let's get back to the Michael Jordan thing. To me, I grew up in the era of Air Jordan, coming up through 91, winning all those championships, all the way to six. I was alive to see that. I was alive to witness the greatness, as we know, as Michael Jordan. I was alive to own the early versions of the original Air Jordan sneakers, the good ones, the ones with the cushioning. And, it did feel like you were actually walking on air, on clouds in those shoes. They were one of a kind. They're nothing like they are today. But do you believe that a man such as Michael Jordan would risk his reputation, his brand, his image, his lifestyle by playing with a little boy's rear on camera? I ask you that. Think of that logically. You're rich beyond richdom. You have multitudes of fans around the world still, and you haven't played the game in 30 years, and people still know who Michael Jordan is. You're recognized everywhere you go. People buy your shoes every year, every month, a new one comes out. What in God's name would ever create the thought to touch a little boy on camera? That makes no sense. You know what I mean? That makes no sense. I don't believe it. I don't believe that's what it was. I believe that based on multitude of stories that I've heard from various people that were actually either there or people that have watched the video all the way through, not the clip version that we see, that he was merely wiping ice off the little boy's backside, getting the ice off, whatever. So I'm going to defend Mike. And, if that alienates you, I am very sorry. We're talking about Michael Jordan, the basketball player, not Michael Jordan, the personal life guy. And by the way, that makes 7 championships the man has under his belt. The 6 in basketball, 1 in NASCAR, 2 in Carolina, North Carolina, 2 in the Olympics, 1 in the NCAA or FIBA championships. So the man is a winner. The man does nothing but win. So those of you that want to talk trash about Jordan, think about a man who has built this image. Bro, he has an icon of him flying through the air. Nobody else on this planet has their own icon before icons were even a thing. Tell me, tell me of all that this man has done, pedophilia is all of a sudden coming out? No, you can't. You can't convince me of that. I do believe, though, some of your favorite actors and actresses and musicians, politicians, you name it, were indeed on Epstein Island, though. I do believe that. But for some reason, we're not talking about them coming out and being prosecuted. And why is that? And another thing I want to ask you, since we're talking about that topic, it is a very sensitive topic, but you know what? We tackle the hard lines here. What the hell happened with P. Diddy only getting 4 years or 50 something months, however long he got? How the hell was that man able to do what he did, conduct himself in a way that was anything but insane? Because I don't know about you, but drinking blood ain't in my forte. Is drinking blood part of your daily ritual? Is spiking someone's drink and them waking up with a sore ass and not knowing how the hell or why the hell you're in their bed with them and asking yourself, I went to bed with a woman and I'm waking up next to Puffy. How the hell did that happen? Tell me, tell me your thoughts on his sentencing. How was he able to get off so light? R. Kelly still, I don't know if R. Kelly had been sentenced yet. R. Kelly was telling you what he was doing. 12 play, that was just telling you, hey, this is what I do. And you love my music so much, you're not even paying attention to the recipe of my disaster. 12 play, you know? My body's telling me yeah, but my mind telling me no. You I just don't understand since we're talking about these type of topics tonight. I don't understand what infiltrates a person's mind who has everything to give to humanity, blessed beyond means financially, blessed beyond means with talent, just to throw it away with their own sick perversions and thinking that they'll never be found out because of their financial wealth. That is sad and disgusting in so many ways. Sad and disgusting in so many ways. I believe that R. Kelly should have been locked up a long time ago. And Michael Jackson, we all thought that Mike was trying to do the same thing. But it's been reported that Mike was trying to protect these boys and girls. I don't know about all that. There's just something weird to me about a grown ass man wanting to be around little kids all the time. Little kids that aren't even related to him. Excuse me. And these little kids are so mesmerized by the fame that they aren't even looking at the obvious. Once again, 48 hours with Diddy, Justin Bieber. Who in their right mind knowing everything they heard about that man in the 90s. And he said, "Oh, I want your young son to come spend 48 hours with me. And after 48 hours, I'll give him the Lamborghini. It's his." Tell me, would you pimp your son out like that? Would you pimp your daughter out like that? Inquiring minds want to know. Because I know damn well there's no amount of money that I would be receiving for the life of trauma that it would cause that individual once they left that 48 hours. Especially everything we've heard about P. Diddy. And you know what? I'm not trying to be a hater. I was a P. Diddy fan. I was a Notorious Big fan. I was Tupac, all that. Grew up in all that genre. Only to find out that the people that you grew up listening to, R. Kelly, were some of the most perverse, despicable human beings on the planet. It's disgusting. And these are some of the things we dive into here at 12 Gauge Investigative Channel. But I try not to go over an hour, and we've reached that time limit. Until next time, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully, next time I will have a guest with me. If not, I will continue to ride solo until I find one. Until next time, stay safe out there and give yourself some love because you're worth it. Maestro, cue that music.